Welcome to Law Excellence Hindu News Analysis. Today we are going to cover these topics that are appeared in the today's edition of Hindu newspaper. Now coming to the first article of the day. Now this article is saying that climate impact of exploring space passing below the radar. Now what is the context of the news? Now the context of the news is that this article is saying we are not talking about the space exploration, especially India has ambitious projects such as Gaganyaan mission, developing India's indigenous international space station and things like that, or reusable rocket launching vehicle and things like that. And now commercialization of space also we are talking about. Now all this context we are forgetting to talk about the climate impact of exploring the space. Now this is what the context that is mentioned in this article. Now this article is saying that in the guise of scientific temper and exploring the nation of space, we are considering that and proudly saying that India is one of the strong space exploration country or space tech country. Now things like that. But this article is saying that there is a lot of climate impact, especially negative impacts of the exploring the space also. Now, first and foremost is that space exploration itself is a lot of carbon intensive process. Okay. Now that is what mentioned in this article. Now this article is saying that there is a lot of climate impact, and not only that, this article mentions certain solutions for the achieving sustainability. Okay. This article is talking about the increasing debris, especially regarding the satellites and rockets that are there in the space. Okay. Now, space is a global common and it should be used for the benefit of everyone, right? But satellite launching capacity or rocket launching capacity is limited to the few countries, and there is a sense of inequality in usage of space. Now, that is also mentioned in this article. Okay. Now, other than that, how this space exploration impacts the environment. Now, that is what mentioned in this article. The first and foremost thing is that it is that it releases CO2. Rocket launching releases CO2, black carbon, and water vapor into the atmosphere. Again, this lead to the increase of global warming. Now, it is been said that black carbon has 500 times more capacity of absorbing the sunlight UV rays, more than 400 times more than the CO2. Hence, it indicates the intensity of global warming. Now, another challenge is there is increasing commercial space ventures. Hence, there is increasing launches and increasing user space. This lead to a lot of debris. Another important thing mentioned in this article is we use rocket propellants, right, such as hydrogen and chlorine, things like that. In rocket propellants, there is a chance of using the chlorine-based chemicals. If there are chlorine-based chemicals, it may lead to ozone layer, right? By reacting in the mid layers, it depletes the ozone layer. UV rays, negatively affect the humans and things like that, right? Now, another thing mentioned in this article is generally satellites burn up in the atmosphere once their mission ends. Now, this burning up release the satellite ash in the middle layers of the air. This is one of the issue. Now, this is increasingly increase the debris in the space, right? No, and not only that, even manufacturing and production of satellites is a lot of energy intensive. A lot of rare earth minerals. Having these rare earth minerals involves a lot of mining, hence a lot of damage and pollution and things like that. Hence, not only in the earth, even in the space, we are also talking about space mining in the asteroids. Now again, this lead to an increase in the space debris and things like that. This is unsustainable and things like that. Okay, even may not be in the near future. Even after 2 decades, people are thinking that the space mining is the future. Right now, this is again as the environment. Now, these are the things mentioned in this article. Not only that, this article is mentioning about increasing problem of debris. Right now, since launching of the various space agencies in the 1950s, now it is being said that presently there are around nearly 20,000. That is 19,000, around 19,900. Satellites are there in the orbit. Now, this is mentioned that, and not only that, around 1,700 rocket launches are happening. Now, all this indicating occupied a lot of space in the orbit. Hence, this is what the thing. And there are many satellites that are non-functional but still orbiting. There is a chance of collision and things like that because of the increasing collision and having less space. Now, this may have collision in the future, which affects the communication. Right now, this covers the radars that gives communication and observation information to the ground research station. Things like that. Now, this is what the mentioned in this article. Now, this article is saying that to make the space exploration sustainable, there is no proper regulation or guidelines that are there that can be followed by globally. For example, we have for climate, we have Paris Agreement. There is no such agreement like that. Even though there is a treaty called Outer Space Treaty, now this article is saying that there is no binding obligation in this Outer Space Treaty, especially to address the issues of this. Greenhouse gas emissions regarding the space launches or regarding the rocket launches and things like that. Now, these to achieve the sustainability, this article mentions certain things. Okay, the first and foremost thing is we need to set up or we need to use the existing committee, that is Committee on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space. Now, in this, they have to set standards that it's okay because it is inevitable to avoid rocket launch because we need satellite communication, especially regarding communication facilities, especially in this globalized world, and also for the monitoring the proper climate change. Even though we are saying that these rocket launches lead to climate emissions, we know that to monitor the climate change emissions, we need to have satellite data, remote sensing data, things like that. Okay. So for that also, and also disaster management and things like that, cartographic maps, all these are we required. So these rocket launches are inevitable. So what this article is saying that as a solution, we need to set standards of reducing emissions, especially launches, right? We need to reduce at least 10% of the launches for every launch and things like that. Okay, this is what mentioned in this article, and we will discuss certain solutions mentioned in this. To achieve the sustainability, this article is saying that we need to ensure that for focus on the reusable rockets. Now, when there is a reusable rockets, we need to ensure that there is less debris. When there is a reusable rockets, when there is less manufacturing waste and things like that. That is what mentioned in this article. Though it's a costly thing, but still it is one of the solutions mentioned in this article. Now, another thing saying that transitioning to clean fuels. For example, it is being said that we need to use cleaner fuels like liquid hydrogen and biofuels so that there can be reduction in harmful emissions during the lifting of the rockets. Again, this is a costly thing, but still it is one of the sustainable thing. Now, another important thing is using biodegradable materials in designing satellites. Now, still this is the challenge for this is again this is a costly process as biodegradable materials are in the research facilities. Again, satellites are in the extreme weather conditions, so biodegradable materials may not catch up to the temperatures or withstand to the temperatures. That is what mentioned as a challenge also. Now, next there are technologies like autonomous debris removal by using robotic hands and things like that. Okay, but still this is also in the research process. Next, a global traffic system is also need a proper regulated use of the space. Why? Because there is increasing competition among the use of the space, especially there is a chance of collision of satellites also, and it can collapse the communication systems and things like that. Now, these are the things you have to remember from the examination perspective, especially mains perspective. Now, this article thinks one of the new dimension, that is climate change angle to the space exploration. Okay, especially in the context of the commercialization of space. Now, this article is saying that ALO report asks nations to uphold freedom of association at work. Now, what is the context of the news? Recently, International Labour Organization, that is ILO, released a social dialogue report, right? Now, remember this point that this social dialogue report is released by the ILO. Now, UPSC has a habit of asking the indexes reports, right? Now, this social dialogue report was released by the Freedom of Association. Previously, if you remember, World Justice report was asked by the UPSC. Likewise, this report can also be asked. Now, this report is saying that world over governments and companies should ensure that there is a proper social dialogue. Now, what is the social dialogue? Now, it is a social dialogue that involves all the stakeholders, such as governments, companies, business organizations, workers or workers organizations. Like to have a dialogue and coordination to address the issues of the workers in various ways. It can be increasing the wages, it can be ensuring the safety of the workers, or having ensuring social security and things like that. Now, this is what now freedom of association, if you remember, this is part of a fundamental right under Article 19. So freedom of association is also under 19 in India. Now, ILO has certain conventions which are called core conventions. Now, one of the convention is about freedom of association and collective bargaining. Now, why freedom of association is very important from labor perspective? When there is a freedom of association, they have collective bargaining capacity because one person cannot ask for increasing wages. Right? Collectively, they can bargain very well with the management. Right? In our DPSP also, if you remember in our DPSP, Article 43 has a clause of workers has to have dialogue with the management in DPSP also. So when there is a proper formation of association, collectively they can demand something. That is the power of mobilization and organization. That is collective bargaining. Now, this is what this article is saying. Now, world over, there is a highlighted in this article that the collective bargaining capacity was decreased. That is what mentioned in this article. Collective bargaining capacity was decreased. Why? World over, the labor was fragmented. There is an issue of unemployment issue because of the increasing unemployment issue and the continuous laying off. Workers cannot take a strong stand. They cannot demand everything from the companies because of the increasing population and all such. There's a lot of competition among the workers themselves. So they cannot have any strong stand. Hence, their bargaining capacity was reduced. Another important thing is fragmented labor. Why fragmented labor? Because nowadays workforce having very low. For example, gig economy. There is no organizing capacity for the gig economic workforce because they are very much fragmented. For example, they don't know who they are working with because there is complete isolation. They're strangers for each other. For example, no two Swiggy workers can know each other. They're working fragmented manner. Another one is digital economy. Now, workforce is also being, though informal in nature, they are virtually working and things like that. Fragmented labor. Hence, there are situations happen in which workers are, ready to work at the lower wage, but they want security of job. Hence, this indicating that there is a less, bargaining capacity over the time because of these things. And this is the outcome of, hence, liberalization and privatization. And it has been said like this. Okay. Now, these are the things. From the examination perspective, you have to know about ILO organization, because UPSC has a habit of asking about international organizations, right? Especially their headquarters and their conventions and things like that. From this article perspective, you have to know that India not signed this freedom of association. From prelims perspective, we will see certain aspects regarding International Labour Organization. Now, you may be knowing that International Labour Organization, it was created in 1999 as a part of the Treaty of Versailles that ended the World War One. Okay, remember this from the prelims perspective. Now, India is founding member of International Labour Organization. Remember this because UPSC has a habit of asking India's role, whether India is a member of particular organization or not. Here it has to be remembered that India is a founding member of the International Labour Organization. Okay. Now another important thing is ILO is a specialized agency of United Nations, right? Remember this thing because UN has around 17 specialized agencies. So that have you remember this thing. Fact. Okay. Headquarters of ILO is Geneva, Switzerland. Okay. ILO was awarded Nobel Prize for Peace, especially regarding working regarding the labor rights in 1969. Okay, these are the things you have to remember, and you have to know that ILO has 8 core conventions. Okay, 8 core conventions. Of these 8 core conventions, India ratified 6. Remember this. India has ratified 6 out of 8 core fundamental ILO conventions. Okay. Now, one of the conventions was asked previously in the prelims exam also. If you remember, it is about child labor. Okay, that's why these are important. Now, forced labor convention, India signed. Abolition of forced labor convention, India signed it. India signed equal remuneration convention. India signed discrimination convention about prevention of discrimination among the employees. Minimum wage convention, worst forms of child labor convention. Now India didn't sign two, core conventions. Now these two are right to organize and collective bargaining convention, freedom of association and protection of right to organize convention. Now these are the two things that are mentioned in this article. Why? Because not just India, I think many of the countries, presently not ratified these two. And the reason being is that this requires certain obligations that, for example, they will get the laborers get the right to strike. Okay, right to strike. They can directly criticize government policies. They can directly, have many rights regarding this. In this way, it affects economy, business ecosystem, and things like that. That is what the perspective of these things, especially regarding the neoliberal policies post 1990s, right? Now, these are the things you have to remember that India has not ratified these 2 core conventions. Now, these are the conventions that is freedom of association, collective bargaining. In fact, mentioned in this article itself, right? That countries has to give these things. Okay, these are the things you have to remember from the plain's perspective. Now we will move to the next article. Now, this article is saying that opposition plans motion to impeach Uttar Pradesh judge. Now, what is the context of the news? You know that recently Uttar Pradesh judge participated in an event that is conducted by the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, a right-wing association, one of the right-wing associations. Right? In this context, while speaking, he, openly criticizing religious minorities, especially Muslims, you know, especially regarding UCC. He said that women are being more respected in the Hinduism, but in other community, it is being said that there is a practice of polygamy. Like in our community, we practice things like tolerance and things like that. Other community, there is, animal slaughter. In this way, he have given socially divisive, content, socially divisive speech. Now, in this context, many people are criticizing that this is against the democratic values and this is against the, judicial position, because by being in judiciary position, especially judge of the High Court, one has to be objective and impartial and non-partisan in nature, right? Openly giving such type of statements reduce the credibility of a judge and, reduce the public trust on an institution like judiciary. Now, these are the things mentioned in this article. This is there in news for the last 2 to 3 days. Now, in this context, certain people are saying that there is a need of impeachment of these judge because of his comments. Now, it is derogatory to the democracy and institution of judiciary. That is what mentioned in this article. Hence, opposition is planning in this context to impeach this judge. So, hence, in this article, it is clearly mentioned that for an impeachment motion to be taken up, an endorsement of 50 MPs in the Rajya Sabha, 100 MPs in the Lok Sabha is needed. Now, remember this, from the prelims perspective, these are the important things. Now, other than this, UPSC has asking that about judiciary repeatedly. Judiciary is a repeated theme both from the mains and prelims, especially if, in previous year, Judges Inquiry Act was asked, right? If you remember, Judges Inquiry Act 1963 was asked, right? In this context, it is important for us to know about this impeachment procedure of or removing the High Court judges, right? We will see that from prelims perspective. Now, from the prelims perspective, you have to know that the provisions regarding the removal of High Court judges have been mentioned in the Article 217. Now, remember this article you can mention in the mains examination. Now, what is the Article 217 saying? It states that High Court judge shall hold office until the age of 62 years. Remember this 62 years because for Supreme Court it is 65 years, right? For High Court it is 62 years. Now, but can be removed by the president through a process mentioned in the Article 124. Now, what is mentioned in the Article 124? There are two grounds that is mentioned in the Constitution. That is proved misbehavior and incapacity. Now, these are the two conditions or criteria, to remove judges, right? This is mentioned in the Article 124. Now, these are the two things you have to remember from the plaintiff's perspective. A motion for removal of judge. Now, it is being said that one of the MP or opposition is now decided to move impeachment motion. Now, a motion for the removal can be initiated by any of them, but once they have to initiate it, it has to be, endorsed by the 50 members of Rajya Sabha and 100 members of the Lok Sabha, wherever it is initiated, right? Now, once it is mentioned, if chairman or speaker admit the motion, now it is their discretion, okay? Now, after they admit it, based on that, the speaker or the presiding officer, whoever it is, will constitute a 3-member committee to investigate the charges alleged on this particular judge. Okay. Now, what is this committee consist of 3 members? Who are they? It can be CJA or any Supreme Court judge, chief judges of the High Court, or eminent jurist. Okay. Now, this committee will inquire the charges, and if they found that these charges are true, they will submit report to the House. Now, once then House go on to start debate, introduce the motions, and in that resolution, if Parliament has to approve with special majority, what is meant by special majority? Majority of the total membership of the House and 2/3 of the members of the House present and voting. This is what special majority in both the houses of the Parliament. Okay, and after that, it is presidential order, that is for removal of the High Court judge. Now, this is what the procedure you have to remember, regarding this. Now, another important thing you have to know is that now this is called as impeachment continuously, right? Do you know that whether impeachment is mentioned in the Constitution or not? Now, first of all, you have to know that yes, impeachment as a word is mentioned in the Constitution, but in the Constitution, it is not mentioned regarding the judiciary, right? It is mentioned regarding the impeachment of the president under Article 61. Okay, impeachment as a word is present in the Constitution regarding the impeachment procedure of the president in Article 61. But in judiciary, we just call it as a removal process only. But in general parlance, we use the word impeachment. Okay, that is what the things you have to know from the examination perspective. Now we will move to the next article. Now this article is saying that India accounts for half of malaria cases in Southeast Asia in 2023. Now, what is the context of the news? The context of the news is recently WHO released World Malaria Report. Now, in this report, it is highlighted what is the status of spread of malaria and how many deaths caused it is, or how many people are having diseases and things like that, or which are the countries. Now, it is being said that world over, 1.5% of burden of malaria is in the Southeast Asia. Now, among this 1.5%, it is India and Indonesia are the major nations that are having burden of malaria. Now, among this 1.5%, it is mentioned that half of the cases are from the India. Now, this is what mentioned in this article. Now, in the present context, now it is being said that presently there is a decrease in the malaria cases, world over, especially in the Southeast Asia region. There is a decrease of around 80%. This reduction. Now, though there is a reduction, but there is significant amount of still present, especially in the countries like India and Indonesia. Now, this is what mentioned in this article. Now, in the year 2023, this article is saying that around 263 million malaria cases are found. Now, among which around 5.9 lakhs deaths are seen, especially regarding the malaria. Now, these are the facts that you can use in your answers regarding the spread of diseases, right? Now, this article is mentioned that around 44 countries are announced by the WHO as malaria-free countries. Now, from the Flint's perspective, you have to remember that in 2024 itself, recently, the last country that is mentioned as malaria-free by WHO is Egypt. Remember this. Before that, there is another African country that is Cabo Verde, declared as a malaria-free country by WHO. Now, from the prelims perspective, you have to know that UPSC has a habit of asking diseases in the prelims examination. Now, previously, it has been other certain diseases, whether it is caused by the virus or bacteria or fungus and things like that, okay, if you remember. Now, in that way, malaria, you have to know that, first of all, malaria is a parasitic disease caused by the bite of an infected mosquito. Hence, it is not a virus nor a bacteria. Rather, it is something protozoan, right? It is caused by the Plasmodium parasite. Okay, you have to remember that it is caused by the Plasmodium parasites, which are spread to people through bites of infected female Anopheles mosquitoes. Now, remember that malaria is not contagious. Okay, don't confuse. Malaria is not contagious. What does it mean? Contagious means it spreads people to people through contact. But malaria is not contagious because it does not spread people to people. Rather, it spread to people through bites of the infected female mosquitoes. Okay, this is very important. Next, vector control intervention is a solution that is being used to prevent and cure the malaria disease. Now, yes, malaria is preventable and curable. Okay, these are the things at least you have to remember from the perspective of prelims regarding the malaria. Remember, malaria is preventable and curable. It is not contagious. Okay, it is not caused by the virus or bacteria or fungus. Rather, it is caused by the protozoan called Plasmodium parasites. Okay. Recently, Egypt was declared as malaria-free. Now, these are the things you have to remember from the prelims perspective. In this article, it is clearly mentioned that India has significant amount of cases regarding the malaria. Yes, this is all the things you have to know. Now, this article is saying that we'll go to any extent possible to eradicate the manual scavenging. Now, this is what said by the Supreme Court. Now, what is the context of the news? Recently, Supreme Court said that we are vowed to go any extent possible to ensure that manual scavenging and hazardous manual cleaning of sewers and septic tanks are wiped out. Now, why this court is saying like that? Now, court has said that in October 2023, we have given a judgment in which we said that union and state governments are duty bound, to completely eradicate the manual scavenging by stringently implementing the prohibition of employment as manual scavengers and the Rehabilitation Act of 2013. Right? There is a statutory act that prevents the manual scavenging as a workforce. Right? It has certain provisions such as it is saying that no person or agency can engage or employ any person for manual scavenging. Right? It is also having certain implications such as imprisonment of 2 years or fine up to 1 lakh if any person is violating this provision. Now, this act also has the provisions of rehabilitation of the sanitation workers and their families. Right? Now, this act is also saying that it is illegal for a sewer or a septic tank to be cleaned by a person without employee providing protective gear and cleaning devices and observing safety precautions and things like that. And this article also mentioned that this manual scavenging is an inhuman occupation, especially in the context of this advanced technology also. Still, we are using humans. Now, because of, the persons, entering into the tank, they are leading to suffocating. There is a word mentioned in this article that is they are dying due to asphyxia. Sorry if I was pronouncing wrong way, but this is what mentioned in this article. This is death causing by the suffocating. That means lack of sufficient oxygen, right, and things like that. So these are the things you ought to know at least. Now, this act also mentioned that every local authority must make sure that there are no insanitary latrines in its jurisdiction, right, and no manual scavengers are employed. Here, a local authority is a municipal or panchayat which is responsible for sanitation in its jurisdiction. Okay. Now, these are the things you have to remember. Now, certain things that are mentioned in this article because government have a Namaste scheme. Now, this is a scheme that is something related to the manual scavenging. What does Namaste means? A national action for mechanized sanitation ecosystem. Now, from the police perspective, remember that it is a joint scheme or it's a scheme that is implemented jointly by the Ministry of Social Justice plus Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Okay, remember the scheme name. What is the scheme? Why it is for? The scheme goals are to ensure safety and dignity of sanitation workers. Okay. And another thing is they want to eliminate direct contact between the sanitation workers and human waste. They want to ensure that all the cleaning is done with safety devices and sanitation work is performed by the skilled workers so that there is no direct contact between the humans and human waste. They want to empower the sanitation workers through entrepreneurship and self-help groups, that is upskilling them with other occupations. And hence they want to achieve zero fatalities in the sanitation workers. You have to remember just that Namaste scheme is something related to the manual scavenging. It may be asked in the place because from the last few months, manual scavenging was in the news. Repeatedly, Supreme Court giving certain directions regarding this. Okay. And from the police perspective, you have to know amicus curiae as a word. Amicus curiae is mentioned in this article because, to assist the judge, especially advocates regarding this case. First of all, what is amicus curiae? See, amicus curiae means, in literally, you can say that it is the friend of a court. Is someone who is not a party to a case but assists a court by offering information or expertise or insight on the hearing of the issue. They will assist the court. For example, it has been said that earlier there is a certain high court set up the fast track courts, especially to address the issues of political leaders such as MLAs. Hence, those who have expertise in previously by being a judge, they will assist them as a amicus curiae and things like that. Okay, these are the things. Amicus curiae is not any legal term or things like that. It is something related to the judiciary term, in which he is an expert. He assists the courts with the expertise. Okay, for example, if a person who is a victim or who is filing a petition and things like that, but he don't know adequate knowledge about a particular theme regarding which he is complaining, hence he can take the use of this amicus curiae. Now, this is what the amicus curiae means. Okay. Now, these are the things you have to remember from the present perspective, and you have to know that there is an act called Manual Scavengers and the Rehabilitation Act of 2013, and Namaste scheme and things like that. Now, these are the things you have to remember from the examination perspective. I hope you like this video. That's all for today. Thank you.